Hello? 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 This is the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast.
Okay, so we're here with Kevin Skipworth, managing broker and partner at Dexter Realty. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Past guest fan favorite.
I know.
If you don't say it, it doesn't happen. Right?
Exactly. I always hear that moniker for people like Brendan Ogmanson and others. So now I can join the list.
Kevin, for people that haven't heard you on our show, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm, as you said, partner managing broker at Dexter Realty. Been in real estate almost 20 years now. Hard to believe. I don't feel that old. But I've worked there with our agents and helping them do some selling. Put out a report every month on the market. For Dexter, I'm a stats guy. I have an economics degree. Background.
I was almost thinking you had a title with economist in it.
I do. I kind of call myself our chief economist,
right?
Because I figure I've got to use that degree for something. So it's hanging on the wall, so it may as well appear somewhere other than the wall.
Right.
But I love numbers. I mean, I crunch numbers. I just I had a mug for Christmas, that Excel spreadsheet on the mug. And so it's everywhere I go, everybody knows it's all about spreadsheets.
Nice. And you came armed with one today, so excited to unpack that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just as like a launch off question, how's the market right now?
You know, it's real estate's never boring. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think the biggest thing this month is inventory changes in inventory. Listing counts have jumped significantly this month. Everybody's sort of hovering around looking at interest rates and trying to figure out when that's going to change. Bank of Canada rates. I mean, the fixed rates have come down, quite a bit. So, but it's just that magic Bank of Canada. It's a psychological thing, I think. People just see that as we're just waiting, and that's the sign to get going. And I think sellers sort of jumped ahead and said, enough's enough. Let's get our property on the market.
Do you think so? I've been thinking about this because last year, of course, at this time, it was a no inventory story or very little inventory.
Yeah.
This year, we have more inventory. Anecdotally, I just spoke to somebody yesterday who was pushing off the listing, and he called me and said, you know what, I think, we're higher for longer. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as soon as possible, let's just get it on the market and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I do think there's like that, the idea that maybe we're probably seeing a cut in June, but it's not as...
Yeah,
it's not as momentous as maybe it once was. But is that kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there is more inventory. I think spring break, Easter was sort of the catalyst. Everybody was waiting for spring. You talk to people, and we're waiting for the spring market. We don't want to do it before spring break. We don't want to do it during spring break. Oh, there's Easter. After that weekend, that week, I mean, there was a tremendous amount of new listings. I mean, everybody saw it, and it's weird though. It's depends on the product type, the area, some more than others, but there's definitely been more new listings. And I think you're right. I think sellers are, rates are going to be higher probably for longer. I don't even know if June will see a rate cut at this point. It just seems the numbers, the U.S.,
right.
They're looking to push off till the fall. It's I kind of feel like it's the Canucks. We all thought this was the time. Now it's like, well, maybe not. So we just keep getting disappointed.
Yeah, right. Casey DeSmith.
Yeah, nothing wrong with Casey. I think there's just so much pent up, and we talk about pent up demand, but there is so much pent up supply too, and I think they just got tired. Like, we need to do something. So.
We are often in a kind of notoriously low inventory environment in Vancouver, but right now it seems like with the increased interest rate or with the increased supply, can you talk a little bit about how important inventory levels are for this market?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been saying for so long, if we had more listings, we'd have more sales. And the multiple offer environment that we've experienced over the last number of years, even in quieter markets, you're still seeing people competing for listings, good listings, well priced, attractive, good areas. So to have more supply just gives more opportunity, and buyers can have a chance to browse, and you can see that sort of a little bit of a swagger with buyers, like, I don't have to jump at this one, I'm going to see the next one, or wait for next week because I know more is coming now, or I can put subjects on or subject to sale. I mean, things that we just haven't seen as much of in the market lately are starting to happen. But it helps the balance too, and it helps prices. It helps keep the control over prices, over the multiple offer scenarios where you see prices, outbid significantly. Not seen that. You'll see it with some, but depending on where they price it, it's a bit of a guessing game sometimes to see where prices are. But it certainly helps to keep better balance in the market, which maybe in turn will help Bank of Canada, because they watch this. They're watching the real estate market. They said specifically they don't want to reduce rates in the spring because they don't want to fuel a spring market. And I think that was sort of the commentary part of it towards June. But of course, all the other numbers that play into it, I think probably June was the best bet. Now it seems maybe not, which have that effect, what that will do to buyers, maybe a little bit more delay, but at some point people need to move.
Right.
Yeah. And we're getting there. Andrew Liss was on the show last year, the economist from the Greater
Vancouver Realtors.
Greater Vancouver Realtors.
Yeah.
And his point was, for a real healthy market, we need around 15,000 listings. In December we were like 8,000 or 8,200 or something like that. Can you give us a sense of where we're at? Because we talk about, since spring break there's been a lot of new listings, but can we talk kind of broader context if we're at kind of healthy levels?
We're not at healthy levels yet, but we're moving towards a better state. I looked at the numbers. We're just over 12,000 active listings now, which is much better than we've been. We're up about, when I looked at the numbers compared to April last year, we're actually up about 75% in active listings to this time last year, which is a big increase. Oh. So last year we were under 10,000 for the longest time, and now we're actually quite a bit above that now at 12,000, and that's just been April. I mean, February, March, slow growth in active listings. So far, we've seen a significant growth. We're up about 35% to March alone in active listings. So, there's been definite growth. We're over 6,000 new listings in April already. And that, we haven't seen a 6,000 number since 2022 in terms of new listings. So
it's funny because everyone talks about buyers sitting on the sidelines all the time, right? And agents talk about that all the time. No one really talks about sellers sitting on the sidelines, but that seems to be what has been happening.
Absolutely.
What you said, pent-up supply. That's like a term that I've never heard of.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's what we've seen.
Well, what do you think's triggering this moment of people putting, other than the spring market? But I mean, are there other external factors that you're considering? I
mean, if you looked at the state of the economy and you looked at the numbers and interest rates, it doesn't make a lot of sense that sellers would all of a sudden start to come, because you would think they'd be still waiting for that magic moment that everybody wants to have as to now's the time to list. I think part of it may just be tired of waiting, but perhaps also looking at some of the regulatory or legislation that's happened. The rental, the Airbnb, the short-term rental, the rental restrictions, the what we're seeing now with capital gains potential, the changes that have been proposed in the budget. There's been a number of things that, that are probably fueling sellers on some levels, the investor side perhaps, that, are just ready to sell. But I think people also just, they want to move. And we've been saying for the last couple of years that there's such a pent-up demand. pent-up demand, also means there's pent-up supply because, people didn't want to sell. They didn't know where to go, and they didn't want to sell in the environment where they didn't want to give up sale price, to a lower amount than what somebody would have got last year.
And is there, and obviously we want to talk about these policy changes, but before we do, I just want to drill down a little bit into the types of inventory. Like, first off, is the type of inventory, and I don't know, presumably you haven't looked at this, but is it clearly, okay, investors are actually the ones that are pushing the inventory? And maybe a easier question is, are we seeing, where and what are we seeing in terms of inventory spikes right now?
It's, hard to know if it's investor or what, but when I look at the numbers and I always come armed with stats, that's my thing. But detached is up about 19% over March, and strata a little bit less. But, it's kind of even. So I don't know if there's any one specific area that's showing more than others. The areas around Metro Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, it seems to be where the areas where there were less inventory are up more than areas where there was more inventory. Like North Vancouver, it's up, what have I got it at? 33% compared to March, whereas overall in the market, we're seeing 16%. So it's
wow.
It's
in a notoriously low,
very low.
I was going to
environment.
say, but North Van's really busy as far as, we don't do a ton over there, but that's what my understanding is.
It's been a busy,
it's
competitive
been a
market.
High sales ratio favoring sellers. Right?
Yeah. So it's certainly seen a different type of market than what we've seen.
Right.
Maybe just as a final question, at least from my end, is absorption rates. Like, we're seeing more inventory. We talked about pent-up supply. We're always talking about pent-up demand. Like, what are you foreseeing, of 12,000 inventory? Like, how much of this is going to stick around?
Well, the absorption rates are lower. They're in the 30% range compared to, they've been in the 40. Traditionally they're north of 50, and that's where you start to see more movement in the market. So it's building quickly. So yeah, absolutely. The way it's going, it sounds and looks like we'll see probably pushing maybe 14,000 active listings. So it's definitely changing, and it's the new listings which are pushing the actives. I should clarify, when I said 75% higher, that was on the new listing side compared to April last year. Active listings are up about 35% year over year, about 18% over March. So it's the new listings which are so much higher compared to last April, which is pushing actives.
So Kevin, as your role as a managing broker, both in residential and commercial, for a lot of people that don't know, that means you see hundreds of deals come across your desk all the time. So you are also the person that people call to ask questions, and often complicated questions about what's going on in the market, right? What, in terms of these the rental changes that have just been announced, cap gains, what are you seeing on the ground? Are there any kind of trends, or are we seeing this actually play out in the market from deal to deal?
It's certainly it's added some transactions that probably wouldn't have happened. The tenancy side, the tenancy changes. I think it's frustrating some landlords that are getting frustrated with how much they're having to take on as a landlord and deal with uncertainty as to what's going to happen with the tenancy regulation. We chatted about the 2 to 4 month notice period for owners' use. It's creating transactions that weren't there because of people wanting to make a change. They don't want to have a investment property. They don't want to, or they want to cash out now while they can at a lower capital gain. It's tough though. There's not a lot of time to do that given the January or June 25th deadline that was in the budget for that. But there's certainly transactions happening. But it's creating a lot of complications, people trying to understand, and we can only advise so much. I mean, we're constantly saying you got to get a legal opinion, you got to get an opinion from your accountant. We can't confirm certain things because we don't know, and it depends on people's situations.
And I'm just thinking about the notice going from 2 months to 4 months. So people that don't know exactly what we're talking about, this means that now if it's a tenanted property and there's an owner or a purchaser who plans to occupy the unit themselves and they serve notice, right now it's 2 months to that tenant from the end of the month.
Yeah.
It's going to be changed to 4 months from the end of the month.
Correct.
Coming this summer, presumably. And so just to understand that now, because one thing we've talked about a little bit is this means now that if you have a tenanted property and you're selling, you're looking probably at about a 4 to 5 month close, best case scenario. So a much longer close than what we typically see in our marketplace.
Yeah.
What do you think the repercussions are of a policy like this?
Well, I mean, it creates probably uncertainty, and it will probably make tenanted properties less attractive from a buyer's point of view. I mean, how many buyers are going to want to wait that amount of time? And just look at from the pure metrics of a rate hold. Rate holds can be up to 120 days. So a buyer gets a rate hold, they get an accepted offer, they're going to have to get a second rate hold, potentially
Right.
to get to the completion date. And if there's a swing in rates, they may lose the rate hold that they had if they go up.
The rate hold is something we have not talked about, which is kind of fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's 120 days, so that's 4 months. But
Most of these are going to be
5 months.
5 months.
Yeah. By the time you get your firm deal, and depending on when that is in the month, because it's 4 calendar months for the notice. So if you give notice or get a firm deal at the beginning of the month, you've got to wait through that whole month before the notice period starts. So it could be pushing 5 months.
I also wonder about, because you think about it in hot markets, we often see sellers trying to potentially get out of deals, especially if it's a long close and they see a real uptick in the market.
Yeah.
In soft markets, we see the alternative. We see buyers trying to get out of deals.
Yeah.
And now you've got this 6 month window here where a lot can change in 6 months.
Yeah. What if a
You'd
buyer?
think there'd be some legal fallout potentially.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, who knows? I mean, buyers' situations change. They lose a job or whatever the case may be. I mean, it just leaves a longer period of uncertainty, and and we're always cautious of long closes because things can happen in that period of time. So it absolutely can impact it. The other side, from a seller's point of view, of they've got to now wait 4 months. What if a tenant gives notice? I mean, a tenant can turn around and give 10 days notice that they're leaving. And so a seller could be sitting on a vacant property for 4 months with no income for it. So it's, it'll impact sellers too. And I guess that it leaves the option to maybe move up dates, but still, it's not always just a matter of everybody just agrees and we'll change the dates. Sometimes it's impacted by, what people's plans are.
Do you see this as creating downward pressure specifically on tenanted properties? Like, is there now a premium for either a vacant or owner-occupied property in the market?
I think there always has been, just because of the uncertainty around a tenanted property and what has to be done to get it vacant, the options that are in place for tenants, of course, to dispute it, which they have, and rightfully so. But there's always been uncertainty. I mean, you guys know when you're dealing with properties and you're looking at one that's tenanted, it's more complicated. Mm-hmm. There's going to be more to it. And from a landlord or a seller point of view, now you're dealing with, the added complexity of longer time, uncertainty, the 15-day dispute period now goes to 30 days. So now you're waiting 30 days to see if the tenant's going to dispute it. It just throws more uncertainty into it. And I know I was listening to your interview last week with David from Landlord BC and talking about downtown and how many properties. And I looked up on the MLS before coming here, and when I did a search for tenanted properties, 38% of properties downtown are tenanted.
38%.
38%. So
Yeah,
that's
we thought it would maybe 50.
I
You
think
would
we
think-
said 40 to 50, didn't we?
I think so, yeah. So you're right in there, but that's a significant amount.
Yeah.
And
That's
obviously
why you don't even check stats.
you're just
Intuitively, it's just I'm
You're
always
like an
usually hang
oracle.
on. Go back to the Chilliwack episode where we did a quiz and I got everything wildly wrong.
38%.
Yeah.
That's significant, though. I mean, for a market that's already been lagging since 2017.
Yeah.
And now we have this extra component and an extra layer thrown on downtown.
Yeah.
And what about can we talk about the cap gain tax and what the immediate, if any, immediate kind of fallout you've seen there, or what the impact is on the market?
Well, I mean, again, it's uncertainty. It perhaps may throw a little more inventory into the mix as some sellers will want to sell and try and take advantage of completing prior to the June 25th date, 25th or 26th. So I think it's going to put some more inventory out there. And buyers will be looking at it and saying, well, if you're going to save X amount of dollars, how is that going to factor into our offer or what we're willing to pay? So, which kind of skews the market because it could skew some values in that you see a sale price that doesn't reflect market value, perhaps because they've saved money and they pass it on, part of it on to the buyers. So, it's going to skew it. It's kind of like, a deal where maybe a realtor buys a property and throws their commissions in and the price is lower or something like it. So it may skew some numbers out there. You're looking at that sale trying to scratch your head and go, that doesn't really make sense, but there's more behind it. So, but I think it'll throw some more inventory into there. It's there's so many things right now that are coming down that we're starting to see people, and that's probably part of the inventory push right now.
We were just thinking about, we were just talking about it when before we pushed record here, but I think I've had 3 or 4 calls in the last week or so since the cap gain from actual tenants who are saying my landlord is listing the property. And I think the idea is can we get in front of this? We were just crunching the timelines here and realizing it's very tricky for landlords to actually get in front of this right now because you got a marketing materials list. You have to serve 2 months from the end of the month.
Yeah.
And June 25th is coming soon, right?
Well, you wouldn't even make it within that 2 months because you're now looking at May and June as the notice period if you can serve notice before the end of April.
Well, that just makes me think right now if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at a tenanted property and I'm looking at when they listed and I'm assuming they listed because of this, if I'm willing to close and inherit the tenant for a couple weeks, there might be a real opportunity for me.
There could be, as long as your financing supports supports that, because not every buyer can take on, that their financing won't get approved based on having a tenant. So, it's opportunity, absolutely, and there may be more of that type of situation.
And so we're talking opportunity in that regard. You did mention offline that in the commercial world, you've seen some pretty big transactions fall apart because of the new tax.
Fall apart or renegotiate, looking to change completion dates to take advantage of a sooner date, and perhaps they've had that advice from an accountant that if you close sooner, then your tax obligation may be less. So you're seeing a little bit of that play out, but probably there's been deals that are falling apart because sellers are not interested in giving up, through capital gains, an increase. Where it'll play out, hard to say. I mean, it still has to be passed, I believe. I don't think it's actually set in stone yet.
Right.
But
But you mentioned there was a offshore buyer in the commercial world that was like, no thanks.
Yeah, I heard about a story about a buyer. It's like, no, I don't want to invest in this kind of environment. And and that's the frustrating part about this is you make these changes and thinking that it's going to help the housing market, but it just ends up pushing capital and investment out of other areas, and that's all the legislation that they do is attacking demand side, thinking, if we get rid of the demand, then supply will be okay, but it's not. You're in effect killing supply by attacking demand.
So can we drill down a little bit there, because I think if I was listening to this and at the gym, and I am not obsessed about real estate, I might be thinking, okay, a bunch of investors are potentially putting their properties on the market. There's not a ton of investors going to buy right now. The investors have left the market. The cap gains as well kind of works in that favor. So there's more inventory for folks like me, right? Like at least right now, that's what it appears like. Like where, so it seems intuitively like a good thing, but can you kind of flesh out where that logic maybe, where the misstep is there in that logic?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I mean, certainly more inventory helps. It helps bring opportunity to buyers that they haven't seen. But it also, it's like a short-term gain. Long-term, it probably hurts more. I mean, the development world, are we going to get new supply in 3 to 5 years? That's where we start to see, the problems is, we're pushing out down the road. Right now it's great. It helps buyers. It creates opportunity. But long term, we're just kind of in this cycle of low inventory. I mean, it's hard to, it's silly to say that 12,000 active listings is low inventory, but it still is. I mean, it's still not, Andrew's right. I mean, at 15 to 16,000 is kind of puts us into a balanced market, 5 to 6 months supply. But, at 12,000, we're getting better, but we're just kind of like, we're kind of going from like this really low place to where it was extremely tough to, well, it's better, but, we're still not in a great spot.
Is the difference, like, because I mean, Toronto's really having a tough go right now, that market. And is the difference, does it come down to inventory?
I think a lot of times it comes down to inventory, absolutely. It stalls the market when there's low inventory. It creates price pressure when there's low inventory, and it creates a lot of frustration. And then that boils over to pushing the government. They got to do something. We gotta deal with this inventory issue. It would be great to see more inventory and more transactions, but for now we're kind of at this point, and I think buyers are, they're trying to be part of the market, but there's still a lot of hesitation. They want rates to be lower. They don't want to be engaging at these interest rates. Even though fixed rates are down, down about 2% than where they were last year. So there is relief in that sense, but it's just that Bank of Canada, we just seem to be watching that, thinking
it's like
that's
the psychological kind of component of it.
It kind of is. A big part of it is psychological, and that's kind of the, I feel like the first rate cut, all of a sudden, we'll start to see a better flood of buyers that are engaging, and better affordability too. I mean, that variable rate is still tough to swallow for a lot of people, and maybe that's part of it too. Sellers that are tired of being, at a higher interest rate and looking to make a move too.
Do you have any thoughts on, and I'm just fleshing this out because I'm just thinking in the pre-construction world, which I know is not your, a lot about it, but it's not what you're kind of focused on. But so the cap gain, if that goes through with the increase, not great for the pre-construction world. The tenancy rules, a lot of those I'm buying for a new 1-bed or 2-bed 3 to 5 years down the line. Those are mom and pop investors. The tenancy rules, not super interesting, not super compelling. Presumably, a lot of the buyers are going away there. At the same time, the government, the federal government is really incentivizing purpose-built rental right now. So there seems like there's going to be this pivot to purpose-built rental. I'm just wondering about like long-term kind of 10-year trends in terms of new supply, because we'll see new supply for housing, but we may see a real stall, presumably in strata.
Yeah.
Like, how do you see that playing out if you've thought about it at all?
Yeah, no, I think about all things, and absolutely, rental construction is extremely high compared to where it's been, and strata or resale type properties, they've just they've not been building what they had in the past, and that's when you talk about affordability, it's rentals. It's important. We need rentals. We need more than what we've got. We should have been doing this years ago. It's like we're playing significant catch up on that side. But people, still want to buy homes, and they still need homes to live in for purchase. But also investors need to buy homes to rent out. I mean, the rental market is made up a huge part from investors. We sort of paint investors as bad, and they're occupying the housing market, taking them away from people that want to buy, but they're providing rentals. I mean, how many investors provide rentals? People don't just buy homes to leave vacant. Some do, and that's their choice.
They get taxed for it.
And they get taxed for it
It's
significantly
a very small
now.
percentage.
Small percentage, yeah. I mean, I feel like that sort of gets lost in the mix of investors provide housing, provide valuable housing to so many tenants. But now you're going to see a lot of them say, I don't want to do that anymore. It's not worth it. It's too onerous. So every rental property that gets sold, that gets, occupied by owner use, takes away a tenanted property. And so, we need more resale properties to provide tenants, homes. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and Canadians, I think more so than many countries, like home ownership is at the top of the, what I want to do with my money, what I want to strive for in terms of housing goals, right?
Oh, absolutely, but also immigration. I mean, like I saw a stat that a significant number of immigrants within 3 to 5 years buy a home.
Yeah, it's like an exceptionally high amount.
Yeah,
right?
So I mean, you've got high numbers of people coming in through immigration, and they're going to want to buy homes, but there's going to be less to buy. So and then of course that puts pressure on the rental market. It's it's sort of these cuts by death by a thousand cuts or whatever the saying is, but just all these things sort of chip away at what really is the need is supply.
Mm-hmm.
You need all kinds of supply, not just rental supply. And that's the struggle out there is supply. It always will be. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't think there's a magic answer,
right.
But it just seems like we're just continually focusing on demand.
And the policies seem to be counterintuitive in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wonder if there's, just thinking about opportunities, we talked about tenanted properties. I wonder how these changes impact the pre-sale market, but specifically stuff that's launched, and is trying to hit their numbers over the next couple of months. Because presumably, if something's launching in the fall, maybe they're pivoting, maybe they're changing, or whatever in the future. But the stuff that is sitting right now,
yeah.
Like I know there's fairly decent incentives out there. I wonder if this kind of changes those incentives to be more attractive even to buyers. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there will be incentives to get products sold in the valley. There's a significant number of incentives happening. A lot of building going on out there. I mean, they want their numbers, and all of this stuff. These changes, the new legislation, it just creates uncertainty and confusion, and everybody's trying to understand it and how is it going to impact me, and it just causes people to stop and wait to figure out how is this going to impact me. So and that's the challenge right now is we're just all trying to understand what does this all mean, and getting clients asking, well, how is this going to affect me? Well, we're trying to understand what it exactly is before we can understand how it affects people.
Right.
What do you think the headline for 2024 is going to be in the market?
Confusion.
Yeah, it feels that way, right? Almost.
Yeah.
It's like it's weird that there's been this like the stalled stop thing, or stalled start kind of thing that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Kind of, and it's weird. It's very feels like purgatory sometimes. Like it's it's worse than almost like a down market or a moving market. It's just like a market where everyone's like anticipating when it's going to kick off, right?
Yeah, it could be the year, maybe the year of anticipation. I mean, everybody sort of thought coming into 2024, I certainly did, that, we're going to see rates starting to come down. That will push, activity. It'll push, sellers. Overall, we'll get more activity in the market. And it started off better, and then it kind of, I think the sentiment of the rate cuts getting pushed out a bit, left people a little more hesitant. And then it was just like for listings, it was like a switch. As soon as Easter weekend finished, that's when all of a sudden listings came on the market. And this could be a 1 month phenomenon. We go back to May and be saying, where's all the listings? Who knows? I mean, I'm not going to say all of a sudden this is we're in a listing market. We're going to have 20,000 new listings by the end of the year, or active listings. Who knows what May is going to bring? But April certainly has brought sellers to the table, and we'll see where that goes. But it's been a year of, I think, confusion, anticipation, but there's a lot of upside. I think there's, activity levels are going to pick up. I mean, we've been waiting for 2 years, and really it's been 7-8 years of a very stalled market. I mean, short of end of 2020, 2021, 2018, 19 were very, very slow years, two of the slowest years. 2020, I don't even know how you describe 2020. But 2021 was the biggest year, and half of 2022.
That's actually in that kind of context. I've never really thought about that, but yeah, you're right. Like 2018, 2019, lackluster years.
Yeah. 2020 was, for all reasons, a weird year, but half of that was good when things started to get rolling again. So, there's a lot of movement that hasn't happened. Because of the way the market's been, and COVID pushed a lot of movement, but I think it also pushed a lot of wrong movement. I mean, how many people do you know that moved during COVID, regretting it? And I don't, and they're probably a bit stuck because of, how many people have low interest rates, sitting on a 5-year,
said I feel trapped.
I'm in the same place. I'd like to move, but I don't want to give up my 2.9% rate to go into a 5% rate. So, there's probably a lot of people like that. So, over the next 2 years, there's going to be a lot of movement where people finally get to the point where now I have to move. Rates are better than they were. I'm willing to stomach a 1.5% increase in rate just to make that move. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for movement in the next couple of years. It's just trying to get through this bit of a period right now.
Yeah. In terms of areas, maybe most resilient areas, but also areas in Metro Vancouver where you think there will be opportunity or is opportunity right now?
I think it's looking at areas where there's higher inventory, and watching.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, watching those numbers. North Vancouver has been a tough market because they've been 2 months inventory over the last while, which is strange, in a market which has, been a very quieter market. But to sit with 2 months inventory, they've seen a significant amount of listings come this month. Maybe that helps in an area like that where opportunity all of a sudden starts to present itself. But yeah, I think it's watching inventory numbers. Where are the listings coming? Because that's where it's just supply and demand it's a simple formula, confused by the government sometimes.
And this podcast.
Yeah.
Sometimes overthink things.
Analysis paralysis.
What about just from we often talk about gaps in the market just in terms of price points and you can make the case that, West Vancouver might be an opportunity right now. We had a guest on the show, this episode's being released this week, but had an interesting take on a downtown market that
Cole Harbour.
Yeah. I guess this is after. Actually, this will be going out after. I was trying not to spoil it, but it's been spoiled. But Cole Harbour as being an opportunity market, what are your thoughts? When you look kind of, someone who's been a student of the market for 20 plus years, do you see kind of pockets outside of inventory where you're just this seems like a good opportunity for someone?
I mean, I think Vancouver is always a good opportunity just because of price growth, because of popularity, and just lack of ability to develop. It's other than that, I mean, I think it really just comes down to what's your goal in real estate? Is it investment? Is it lifestyle? Is it family? I think there's always, anywhere you look, there's opportunity in real estate, and when you look long term, there's always a benefit to it. So it just depends on what you're looking for.
Maybe I'll put it to you this way.
Matt's bringing out the niece.
I'm bringing out your niece, your theoretical niece, who says, "Hey, I wanna buy something in Vancouver. I got, let's just say enough for a potentially entry-level single-family home down to, a
$2 million
studio.
bucks. $2 million
bucks.
Mm-hmm.
But
she's done okay.
But if you want to say
Wow,
you can bring
$2
the
million.
west, you can bring the west side in too.
Yeah.
But I'm looking and include the valley, like just straight Greater Vancouver region. What would you tell her to buy and where?
Always as close to Vancouver or in Vancouver if you can.
Yeah.
I think historically, you look at it, it's always had better gains. And again, it comes down to demand and supply. You're going to have more development in the valley, in the Fraser Valley.
Yeah.
There just is better opportunity to develop. All these new zoning changes, it will create supply to a point. I mean, there's only so much supply that can be created from a logistics point of view, and just from a financial point of view. I mean, you just can't afford to build some stuff based on our land values in the city. So, right. I would, as close to you can to the city as possible. I think it's always going to be the best bet.
Our friend of the show, Professor Andrei Pavlov, this sounds like a similar advice, but buy as big a lot as you can, as far west as you can.
Yeah, basically. I mean, buy dirt. It's not it's not being built anymore. So
this was many months ago, but I think we were both at the same event where Bob Rennie. Now we're just bringing up people who have said the same thing, but Bob Rennie was there and he said, even the mayor of Surrey says she's from Vancouver when she's in Paris.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at all the major cities, where are the highest values in the world? It's near the city. And so, if you're looking long term, then, be where the action is, be where things are happening and where there's less opportunity for, supply to really balloon. There'll always be ups and downs in supply. That's just part of markets. And, some people look at the west side and think, well, it's a bit slower because the prices are higher, but they are higher for a reason. And we haven't seen, when's the last time you ever saw, a 50% drop in prices in Vancouver West? I mean,
right.
It doesn't happen.
Although, I'm starting to look at the west side as an opportunity, and I know that, like, to a lot of listeners, that's going to seem crazy when they look at the price tags. But when you look at what's going on in, like, Grandview, Fraser, Knight, it's like, I don't know, Dunbar looks pretty affordable with a 50-foot lot for,
Absolutely, and if you can buy a detached lot in the city of Vancouver, I mean, it's, buy it, because they're only going to start to be developed into multiplex. There's going to be less single family lots. It's a declining.
I feel like there's very few places, at least in my mind, maybe just I'll say in Canada, where you can literally over the course of a year watch single family homes disappearing, like in front of your eyes, quite
at a quicker
quickly.
pace than we ever thought. Because I remember when we used to talk about the show, like, it was always thinking that it would take decades. Right. But it's not. You're watching it unfold really, really quickly here, right?
Absolutely.
And I can't remember the stat. I shouldn't even bring it up. But the amount of permits in place for multiplexes, we were just talking about this. But the city just released some, and it's staggering. Like, this is going to happen a lot quicker than people think.
Absolutely, and those, it's going to become that prime property that it's harder and harder to get. And so, if you can afford to buy a single family lot or house, I mean, there are no lots, but single family house, it's definitely probably one of the best investments you can make. I mean, real estate always is when you look at it long term, and that's. So yeah, tell your niece to buy closer to the city. I tell my son. Your niece, actually. Yeah. Oh, I tell my son that, but he just asked me, where am I going to bring the check?
Maybe as a final question, Kevin, we're coming up on the halfway mark of the year here. What do you think 2024 does for the balance of the year?
I think it's going to get busier from a sales perspective. It's been a relatively tame market so far. I don't even know if we'll hit 3,000 sales in Greater Vancouver in April. Probably be similar to March numbers, 2,700 range. So I think there's only room to grow, and it's part of it is interest rates, which is silly because interest rates are lower when reality. I mean, nobody's taking variable rate mortgages. Like, has anybody that you guys have worked with taken a variable rate mortgage? No, they're taking fixed, and they're lower. So rates are lower, but it's that psychological thing. And as soon as that first rate cut happens, I think it just triggers people like, okay, everything's going to be okay. Rates are, coming down from the Bank of Canada side.
We're on the right side of the trajectory.
Absolutely. And part of it's prices too. I mean, you look at gas this morning, gone up 10 cents, and everybody's sort of feeling the pinch of that still. So I think as we go through the year, things kind of level out a bit. People get a little bit more comfortable and just adjust to it. I mean, the markets adjust, buyers adjust. This is going to take a bit longer than we all thought. But I think there's opportunity for the rest of the year. And with more supply, that's just going to drive more sales.
Kevin, we've got this segment called the 5 Wire, 5 lighthearted questions that we end every show with. Can you stick around for that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so question number 1 is, what is one book that you've read recently that you would recommend for our listeners?
I just went to Mexico last week, took a book with me. I don't think it left my bag.
Sounds like every time I bring a book somewhere.
I don't read books, but I probably read the equivalent of a book every week in articles and always on Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter, and so I feel like I read the equivalent of a book every week, just trying to catch up on everything that's going on in the market and the Canucks. I'll say that very quietly.
Is there a favorite source?
Not really. It's just whatever headlines trigger me to look at it. And sometimes you read the headline and you're like, that's not exactly what I thought I was getting into. I'm not a book reader. I've tried endless times. I've bought the self-help books. I've bought, everything, and I just can't get into them. It's I get distracted. It's like, oh, what's going on now out in the world?
rather be looking at a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Yeah.
In the last few years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
I think I said this last time I was on. I bought a Peloton.
Right.
And it is still being used. It is not a clothes hanger. It's not collecting dust. It actively gets used, and I think that's still my belief. I know I'm 51 now. Hard to believe, but. Or maybe it isn't hard to believe, but my doctor recently said that as you get older, your metabolism changes, and it's not so much about exercise; it's more about eating. So, I think the next kind of lifestyle adoption is probably looking at healthy choices and managing that part of it. I've got the cycling part down. Now it's just the other side of the equation.
Right.
Supply and demand, right?
Exactly.
It's simple numbers.
I think the third one, I feel like we're in the playoffs. I'm not sure exactly when this is going out.
You're calling an audible here.
I'm calling an audible. We're in the first round. It's 1-1 right now. We're coming off a loss, which is, I think, but you're a student of the game. I know you're a student of the game for sure, and a Canucks fan. Where do you think they end up? What round? And what does the rest of the year look like?
Oh boy.
Do they make it out of the first round?
The last game, that had to be the most confusing game.
Frustrating.
I've ever seen. It kind of mirrored the real estate market in a way right now.
Yeah.
Like, it just, nothing makes sense.
If shots on goal are sales.
Yeah, I know, right? It kind of feels like there's this weird dynamic, between the real estate and the Canucks right now. We go these ups and then down and then up and then down. That being said, I mean, heart or head do I think with? My heart says, they've got a better team, of course. They've, more opportunity. My head just isn't sure. I think Demko being out is
huge.
It's huge, and it's a psychological thing too.
Yeah.
I think you could just completely tell that the team that game, they were playing like they were the desperate team when they should have been the confident team.
That first goal, there's such a better team, but in that first goal in Game 2 was just
it was right when the chance.
I know,
the
Smith,
brutal. Yeah,
stop! Don't chant his name. You're distracting him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see them get out of round one. Round two will be tougher, especially if Demko doesn't come back. Goaltending is so important. Nothing against DeSmith, but he's not the number one for a reason. So, round two, but beyond that, yeah.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, I'm going to regret that comment probably in a couple weeks.
Question 4: favorite band or music?
I've gotten into country lately, and I went to my first country music concert a few weeks ago. Saw Tim McGraw.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I've never been to a country music concert. So yeah, it's sort of taken over, much to my son's chagrin. I can't get into rap. Never been big into rap other than the late '80s, early '90s rap. But that was a different story.
A friend of the show said if you're not attractive, being a country music artist might be your best route.
Well, there we go. I'm just mirroring that. But I saw Tim McGraw and I'm looking at him on stage. I think he's 57, 58, and like. Such good shape, and I'm thinking, if he can do that, then certainly I could do that.
What was his comment? Was more in regards to, was it Luke Combs or something?
Oh, Luke Combs,
Daryl Simpson, wasn't it? He went to the Luke Combs show and calls it like he sees it.
There you go. So,
Question number 5, and last but not least, something that you've purchased for under $1,500 that's had a positive impact on your life.
Probably the monthly Peloton subscription. Everybody says, how can you pay that? Whatever is $60-something a month. But I mean, that's
if it
nothing.
Works. That's
I mean, it's something that I get to use, and I, and it's right there. It trips me in the morning when I get out of bed. So
and if you're feeling the benefits, I feel like $60 is not a lot to pay.
No, not really. And if it gets my mind off of real estate, then then why not?
That's worth $60 all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So sorry, there's no big ticket items, just that. I was going to go with something else, but it was surrounding my son and some stuff. But I won't go there, just in case he listens to this podcast.
Kevin, how can people find out more about what you're up to and Dexter and everything you're doing these days?
Well, I mean, I'm active on X, whatever you want to call it these days. Go to our Dexter Realty website. You can see all the market reports that I put out. Sign up at a monthly report that comes out, and sign up to get that. As I said, I love numbers and love putting them out there. And I think there's different ways to look at it. Sometimes talk about the numbers. The numbers kind of speak for themselves sometimes. But I love to put that out, or call me, email me. Text me, whatever works. But always happy to chat about real estate. It's a fun topic.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.